They thought he was just another easy target, a quiet man alone in a diner. But when the bikers pushed too far, they learned the hard way that some battles are over before they begin. The wind had a bite to it that afternoon as Darius pulled his old truck into the gravel lot of Earl's Diner, a weather joint just off Route 66. It was the kind of place where time seemed to stall, where strangers weren't always welcome. The neon open sign buzzed faintly against a dusty window, flickering like it was fighting to stay alive. Across the road stood a forgotten gas station, its pumps rusted, its windows clouded with years of grime. Darius killed the engine, sat a moment, and studied the diner. Then he took his wallet and cap, stepped out, and let the gravel crunch under his boots. Inside, the place was every bit as tired as it looked from the outside. Checkered floors, cracked vinyl booths, and a jukebox that hadn't sung a note in decades. The air smelled of burnt coffee and stale grease, the perfume of places that refused to die. Behind the counter, a waitress with weary eyes wiped down a surface already clean, muttering to the short-order cook. When Darius walked in, the bell above the door gave a sharp jangle that seemed louder than it should have been. Heads turned. No smiles, no nods, just stares. The kind that come heavy and slow, full of quiet suspicion. At a corner table, 4 bikers sat draped in black leather, their vests patched with skulls and club names. Sunglasses hid their eyes despite the dim light. Their laughter stopped the moment Darius entered. Unbothered, he adjusted his cap and moved toward a booth near the window. He liked sitting where he could see the door. Old habits die hard. The waitress came over, pen tapping against her notepad. "What'll it be?" she asked, her tone flat but careful. "Cheeseburger and fries," Darius said quietly. "Coffee. Black." She scribbled it down, eyes flicking nervously toward the bikers, then hurried off. Darius didn't watch her go. He just sat still, hands around his coffee cup when it arrived, as if the noise of the room didn't touch him at all. But it did. The biggest of the bikers, a bearded man with tattooed knuckles and a belly like a barrel, leaned back in his chair, his voice cutting through the diner. "Well, would you look at that," he said. "Looks like we got ourselves a tourist." The others snickered, low and mean. Darius said nothing. "Hey buddy," Beardman pushed louder now. "You deaf or just rude?" The waitress placed the coffee on the table, her hand shaking slightly. Darius gave her a faint smile, a soft thank you. It wasn't her fight. She knew it too, and slipped away fast. Darius took a slow sip, eyes calm, heartbeat steady. Outside, a truck rumbled past, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Inside, the silence stretched thin. Something was about to break. Inside, the air thickened like the calm before a storm. The silence wouldn't last long, and Darius knew it. The tension in the diner felt like a held breath, a moment stretched too thin. The bikers had stopped pretending now, all eyes locked on Darius, waiting for a reaction he didn't feel the need to give. "Maybe he's just shy," the bearded man jeered, lips twisting into a smug grin. "Or maybe he's lost. Ain't much for his kind out here." That did it. Laughter rippled through the group, low and cruel, echoing off the walls. The diner wasn't big, but in moments like this it felt suffocating. Darius took another slow sip of his coffee, as if none of it mattered. He didn't twitch, didn't blink. If anything, he looked bored. His silence, that calm, only made them angrier. A chair scraped across the linoleum, harsh and loud. The bearded man, Travis as Darius would soon learn, pushed away from the table, boots thudding as he swaggered forward. The others leaned back, grinning, eager for a show. Behind the counter, the waitress froze, eyes darting between Darius and the advancing biker. Travis stopped beside Darius's booth, close enough that the stink of sweat and cheap cigarettes filled the air. "Hey," he said, voice dripping venom. "I'm talking to you, boy." The word hit like a slap, sharp, deliberate. Darius didn't move. He set his cup down gently on the saucer. "Something I can help you with?" he asked, voice calm, even. Not a challenge, just a question. That tone, polite but firm, made Travis hesitate for half a heartbeat. "You're sitting where you don't belong," Travis growled, regaining his edge. "Don't you know how things work around here?" Behind him, one of the others, a wiry man with stringy hair, called out, "Show him Travis. Teach him some manners." Travis smirked. A fitting name for a man so desperate to prove himself. Darius exhaled softly, barely audible. "I'm just here for lunch," he said. That calm tone pushed Travis over the edge. He wanted fear, not composure. He slammed his fist onto the table, rattling the salt shaker. "I don't think you heard me, friend." Darius finally looked up. His gaze locked onto Travis, steady, unblinking. In that instant, something shifted. It wasn't aggression in Darius's eyes. It wasn't fear either. It was stillness, cold, deep, immovable. Travis felt it. He wouldn't admit it, but he felt it. "Back off," Darius said quietly. Not a plea. Not a threat. Just a fact. The diner went silent. Even the cook had stopped moving. Travis's jaw tightened. "You're gonna learn some respect today." He reached out, hand darting for Darius's collar. And never made it. Darius moved faster than thought, his hand snapping up, catching Travis's wrist midair. His grip was iron. The biker froze, eyes wide, the bravado draining from his face. "Don't," Darius said softly. His voice was calm, but there was an edge now, a warning. For a moment, Travis didn't know what to do. The other bikers were watching, goading him silently to act. He yanked his arm free with a sharp jerk, stumbling back a step and snarling to save face. "Think you're tough, huh?" Travis spat, flexing his hand. "We'll see about that." He turned toward the others. "Get up, boys." Chairs scraped across the floor. The air thickened. The rest of the bikers, 5 in total, rose one by one, smirking as they cracked their knuckles and rolled their shoulders. Darius stayed seated. No fear. No anger. Just that same quiet stillness that seemed out of place in a room so tense it could snap. The waitress, trembling, reached for the phone behind the counter. "Don't," she began, but Travis cut her off with a glare. "Put it down," he barked. She froze, helpless. Travis turned back to Darius. "You've got 2 choices, pal. Walk out that door right now, or we take this outside." Darius didn't move. Didn't even blink. He set his coffee cup down, the sound barely audible. "I'd rather finish my lunch," he said simply. Travis grinned like he'd already won. "Fine. We'll do it here then." The bikers moved closer, forming a half circle around the booth. They thought they had him cornered, thought numbers would matter. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The diner became a stage, every soul inside frozen in place, unwilling audience members to what was about to unfold. Even the clink of utensils had stopped. The bikers loomed, shadows stretching long across Darius's booth. Travis cracked his knuckles and sneered. "Last chance, tough guy. Walk out now before we put you down." Darius met his glare, unblinking. His body didn't tense, his breathing never changed. He looked almost bored. That calm, that indifference, made Travis furious. "You just don't get it," Travis snarled and lunged. The moment stretched slow for everyone else, but for Darius, it was instinct, like breathing. He moved, not a flinch, not a shuffle, but a precise, practiced shift. Sliding from the booth in one fluid motion, he caught Travis's wrist mid-swing and redirected the force. The biker stumbled forward, off balance. Before he could react, Darius twisted his arm behind his back and guided him straight into the table. The thud echoed through the diner as Travis's chest hit the laminate hard. One down. The others froze, startled. Darius released Travis, letting him crumple to the floor, gasping. Then he turned toward the rest, eyes calm but certain. "You don't want this," he said softly, almost like advice. But bikers never backed down. Not with an audience. The wiry man with stringy hair charged next, yelling, fists wild. Darius stepped aside, smooth as water around a rock, and drove his elbow deep into the man's gut. The biker wheezed, folding over as Darius used his own momentum to send him sprawling into a chair. 2 down. The remaining 3 bikers moved together now, the reality of what they faced finally sinking in. This wasn't a bar fight, it was something else entirely. Panic crept in, sharp and real, replacing the bravado that had filled the diner only moments before. But it was too late to turn back. The largest of the 3 lunged first, grabbing for Darius's shoulder. A mistake. Darius pivoted sharply, trapping the man's arm and sweeping his legs out in one smooth, efficient motion. The biker hit the floor hard. Before he could recover, Darius dropped to one knee, pressing a solid weight into the man's back. "Stay down," he murmured. The biker froze, gasping for air, and obeyed. 3 down. Another came from behind, swinging a chair overhead. The attack was wild, desperate. Darius ducked beneath it, rising fluidly as the chair crashed into the wall. Before the man could swing again, Darius snatched the chair from his hands and yanked it free. The biker stumbled backward, off balance. Darius stepped in, a controlled shove sending him sprawling into a booth, where he collapsed in a heap. 4 down. The last biker hesitated, hands trembling, eyes darting between Darius and the wreckage of his crew. His friends groaned on the floor, bruised, beaten, humiliated. Darius hadn't even broken a sweat. He tilted his head slightly, a silent question. "You're done." The biker swallowed hard, then turned and bolted for the door. The bell above it jangled wildly as he fled into the parking lot. 5 down. The diner went still. Darius exhaled, adjusting his baseball cap as he surveyed the mess. The fallen bikers moaned softly, too winded or shocked to rise. Travis slumped over the table, looking up with pain and disbelief. Darius met his eyes. "I told you to back off," he said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. But it wasn't the fight people would remember, it was the stillness that came after. The waitress stood frozen behind the counter, one hand still on the phone she'd never had the chance to use. The cook peeked through the kitchen window, eyes wide, spatula dangling uselessly from his hand. Darius straightened, his breathing steady, his posture relaxed. If you hadn't seen what just happened, you'd think he'd simply bent to tie his shoe. Travis groaned, pushing himself halfway up, his pride bruised worse than his ribs. "What the hell, who are you?" he rasped. Darius looked down at him, face unreadable.
"No es Mirk. No gloat."
"Just a guy getting lunch," he said softly. Travis glared through bloodshot eyes. "You ain't normal. What the hell are you?" Darius's gaze swept the diner. The faces staring back weren't filled with fear, but something closer to awe. "Respect." He sighed, shaking his head. "You don't want to know." From the corner, the wiry biker coughed weakly. "You military or something?" Darius didn't answer. He just turned and walked back to his. His plate was still there, burger and fries untouched, coffee cup half full. Darius sat back down as if the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. He picked up a fry, took a slow bite, and chewed in silence. Around him, the diner remained frozen in disbelief. The waitress was the first to move. She stepped forward cautiously, her voice trembling. "Sir, are you okay?" Darius looked up and gave her a small, polite smile.
Infine, maemme."
She blinked, stunned by how calm, how gentle he sounded after what he'd just done. Her gaze darted to the bikers sprawled across the floor groaning, then back to him. I'll get you a fresh burger," she stammered. "No need," Darius replied evenly. "This one's just fine." In the far booth, an old man with a farmer's tan and hands rough from decades of work muttered, "I ain't never seen anything like that before." Whispers rippled through the diner like wind through tall grass. Darius ignored them. He knew what they were thinking. A calm man in a world full of noise stands out. People remember that kind of quiet. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few crumpled bills, and placed them neatly beneath the edge of his plate. Then he rose from the booth. The soft thud of his boots was the only sound in the room as he walked toward the door. The waitress watched him go, heart still racing. "Wait," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you really?" Darius paused with his hand on the door. For a moment, he glanced back, holding her gaze just a heartbeat longer than expected. "Just a guy who knows how to finish his lunch," he said, a faint smile ghosting across his face. Then he stepped outside. The bell above the door jingled faintly as it closed behind him. Outside, the gravel crunched under his boots. The wind had picked up again, carrying the faint smell of dust and motor oil. Near the edge of the lot, the biker who had fled earlier stood by his motorcycle, frozen in place. His expression was a mix of fear and disbelief. He didn't say a word. Just stepped aside. Darius climbed into his truck. The engine rumbled to life, breaking the stillness that had settled over the lot. He put it in gear, glanced once in the rearview mirror, at the diner, at the people still watching through the window, and then drove off down the long empty road. The bikers would recover. The bruises would fade. But the lesson would stay burned into memory. You don't judge a man by how he looks, how he talks, or where he's from. Sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones you should never test. For the people in that diner, the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Word spread fast. A story like that doesn't stay quiet. "Yeah, I was there," someone would say later. "He barely moved. Took those bikers apart like it was nothing. Didn't even break a sweat." Another would add, "He was calm the whole time, like they weren't even a threat." The waitress told her version too. "I asked him who he was," she'd say, eyes wide. "And you know what he told me?" She'd pause, remembering. "Just a guy getting lunch." It was the quietest few weeks the bikers ever had. Every time someone teased Travis about the diner, he'd go red in the face and mutter, "Forget about it." But deep down, he couldn't. None of them could. That day had broken their arrogance. It taught them that strength isn't in numbers or noise, it's in control. Real power isn't about proving you can, It's about choosing not to, until there's no other choice. As for Darius, he didn't care about the stories or the whispers that spread along Route 66. He didn't want recognition or fear. To him, it was simple: you treat people with respect, you mind your business, and if someone crosses the line, you handle it, not with anger but with discipline. Somewhere down that long, empty stretch of highway, Darius drove on. The miles passed like whispers beneath his tires, the sun sinking low behind the desert hills. He wasn't thinking about the diner anymore, or the men he'd left behind. His thoughts drifted instead to another time, to his years as a Navy SEAL, to missions no one would ever hear about. The faces of people he'd protected, often without them ever knowing. That was what mattered to him.
Not the noise. Not the ego.
Just the job, and doing it right. An old tune crackled through the truck's radio, the kind that makes the road feel endless and free. A few miles later, Darius pulled off at a small roadside gas station. He stepped out, stretched his legs, and walked inside. The cashier, a teenage kid with headphones hanging around his neck, looked up as Darius approached the counter. "You headed somewhere important?" the kid asked, trying to make conversation. Darius offered a faint smile, placing a few bills on the counter.
Nope.
"Just passing through."
The kid nodded, then hesitated.
"You military or something?" Darius paused, just for a beat, then shrugged. "Just a guy getting water." He stepped back outside, bottle in hand, climbed into his truck, and started the engine. The kid watched through the dusty window as the old pickup rolled away down the highway, a faint trail of dust rising behind it. He couldn't explain what he felt exactly, maybe respect, maybe curiosity, but he knew he'd remember the man who said almost nothing and meant every word. And just like that, Darius was gone.
Another town.
Another stretch of road. He didn't need recognition.
He didn't want it.
But for those who'd seen him, his quiet strength left something lasting, a reminder that power doesn't shout.
It stands still.
Because the calmest people often fought the hardest battles.
And real respect?
It's earned through control, composure, and quiet strength.